A very good morning to all of you, and thank you for joining us this morning. We're pleased to have everyone here with us. I'm Untitled, the Chief Evangelist for Luminary Learning Solutions, and I will be the voice of the webinar this morning. We welcome you to a new and improved Season 3 of Reset and Go. And in continuation to Saturdays are for Learning with Luminary, we present Revive and Thrive. As the saying goes, gear up to get your learning on. In today's segment of Revive and Thrive, we are discussing an important topic: vision, mission, and values, and a statement or a part of the DNA, a conversational exchange of real experiences and validated ideas on which to leverage your success and truly thrive. Our subject matter experts this morning, and it is a pleasure and honor to introduce the panel. Chinthi, Weerasinghe, CEO of Mitra Digital. Joining her is Rathnakala, Kumaragurunathan, Associate Director, Head of Training and Knowledge Management at Acuity Knowledge Partners. And Sarath Kumara, Senior Consultant for People and Organizational Transformation and former Executive Director, Human Resources and Administration for Camso Loadstar. Steering the conversation today is Varun Chandramohan, a trainer with Luminary Learning Solutions. On that note, let's dive right in, and over to you, Varun.
Thank you so much, Anton. A very good morning and good evening to everyone joining us around the world. Welcome to the 4th episode of the webinar series Revive and Thrive by Luminary Learning Solutions. And what a session we have in store for you today. We're going to be talking about vision, mission, and values. And we're going to be discussing if it's just a statement or is it truly a part of the DNA. And joining us today is our wonderful co-host, the one and only Anton, and our 3 amazing panelists and guests, Chinthi, Radhi, and Sarath. Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
The pleasure is ours. All right. I want to begin by asking my panelists, what does the words mission, vision, and values mean to you? And why do we need to know it? Or why do anybody in an organization know what those mean? And perhaps we can start with you, Chinthi. What are your thoughts on that? Why should we know what mission, vision, and values are?
Absolutely. I think the vision, vision, and the values actually sets the tone for the organization. If I could just simplify it, a mission is why we exist, the purpose of the organization. A vision is where we want to take it, a goal, a set of objectives, and your values are what are the guiding principles to take it there. I think, as I was saying, it sets the tone for an organization. It gets everybody aligned to the same thought process, and it motivates people to achieve that. And without it, I think there can be confusion. There can be, especially when you're trying to scale your organization and you're trying to empower others to take you on your journey. I think having a strong mission statement and a mission for the organization, not just a statement, driven through your vision and values is really critical.
Right. Absolutely. Radhi, Sarath, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think, Chinthi put it very well, Varun, and I think it's also your authentic purpose. So it's very important to define this authentic purpose of your existence, because that is going to be sort of your guiding light to get to where you want to be. So when we're faced with adversity such as what we are facing right now, having that as part of your not just your statement and framed on your wall, but part of your DNA, takes you through making those strategic decisions to weather and navigate these kind of storms that we face.
Sure, yeah. Sarath? Yeah.
In my case, I think what I see, if you take organization as an individual,
right,
the individuals have our own aspirations in our life, maybe in our profession. Vision is like our aspiration to be in the mid to long term, and then mission is I think what we do to go there, and values are the guiding principles for our behaviors in the organization. So as I think both Chinthi and Rathi said, I think within that context only, I think we are moving forward as organization, right?
Yeah, absolutely, I agree with that. And so let me ask. I think we have some tough questions to sort of explore during this webinar. During this pandemic, and we've seen multitudes of lockdowns come and go, and we've seen organizations. Some organizations thrive, of course, but then again, you see widespread news around the world of organizations cutting their numbers or facing losses, or rather losing businesses. We're talking job losses. We're talking pay cuts and so on. And this whole mission, vision, and the values of the company has come under scrutiny, especially the critics. They sort of come forward and say, look, some of these large organizations, at the core of the mission, in their annual reports, in their sort of their branding campaigns, in their sort of the career related posts and so on, they talk about people and how people are at the center of everything and all that. Now, in a situation like this, I mean, at the end of the day, it is a business, but in a situation like this, when organizations are forced to take drastic decisions to stay afloat, how does that impact the mission, vision, and values of an organization? Do they carry any meaning, or what are your thoughts on that? This is open to the panel. Yeah, sure.
So I think it doesn't change in any situation, and it shouldn't. At Mitra, our values are heart, insight, dependability, and creativity. And actually, we drew energy from those values during this time. It was pretty bleak. We had a few clients that decided to, I mean, for good reason, they were losing business, so they couldn't really invest in building more digital solutions, and they decided to sort of stop some of the contracts. Sure. But however, what we did at that point is, one, as an organization, we really looked inwards. We looked at the insights, which is one of our values, that drove to really understand what do we have inside the organization that we can creatively sort of repurpose ourselves, which is our second value. And what we decided at the time was Mitra, was historically a services organization. Sure. We evolved ourselves to actually build a product that we have taken to market during the pandemic, which was very much aligned to the situation of the world, right? It was around a mental well-being app that monitored an individual's well-being and helped a service provider, a healthcare service provider, as well as the individual monitor themselves throughout the process. Now, the insights that we were learning from the current situation helped us, build that, and we evolved ourselves, and we depended on our employees, and they depended on us to not make any drastic changes, and that, which is our third value, dependability, helped us sort of evolve ourselves to this new state. And with that, I'm happy to say we didn't have to lose anybody. We didn't cut any salaries for our employees. It's been a tough year, I tell you. It's been really, really tough, and we are still trying to work our way out of the woods, if you will. But we've got the heart, which is our most important value, right in the center of it, and that matters to us, and that drove us through these stormy times, if you will.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah. Raji, Sarath, any thoughts? Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, Varun, I think Chinthi is very right in stating how, I mean, this pandemic and like any adversity, but this particularly brought companies to their foot, if you will, to their feet, and to actually put that culture, values, mission, all of these, fancy words to test, right? So it was a moment of truth, and we saw companies who were featured in headlines were companies who actually lived what was framed and put on their walls. So I mean, companies that not for the sake of marketing. So if you take an example, even the content media companies like Google, Zoom, MS Teams, or even Zoom and Amazon Prime, etc., they had a period of allowing certain accesses for free, and that was not just about marketing, but it's also about the purpose that they stood for, which was accessibility, which was getting people together. And we saw companies like that bring together and put to practice what they actually stand by, and that is their core values, right? Even companies that put their well-being if well-being was their core value of their mission and vision and their value system, that took priority. Like Chinthi said, if it's about your employees, if it's a people's organization, and if you've boasted that you are a people's organization, this was a good example and moment of truth, whether you actually put your people in front, and it can be any stakeholder. So I think, I mean, as you very correctly asked, whether it is something that you are required to just follow by the book, or whether it's part of your core system. And I think this showed companies that the strong grew stronger. And I suppose from my experience, I see the weak getting weaker because it just became part of their books rather than something they have it as part of their value system.
Right, absolutely, I agree with that. Yeah. Sarath, what are your thoughts in your past 6 months? What have you seen, and what are your thoughts on this?
It was a period where I think we were tested by this adversity, whether we are aligned with our values, and are we aligned with our vision, and are we working in accordance with our mission. So now, having vision, mission, and values actually helps to thrive a situation like this. That is my experience. For example, now I have seen even in Sri Lanka, even in the other parts of the world, some companies, I think just after onset of the crisis, they started cutting salaries, they started cutting numbers, and whereas I think most of the other companies, they just didn't do that, right? So they wanted to look after their people. They put their people first. And what they did was they looked after their people during the crisis. And then if they couldn't bear that cost or bear that burden further because of the situation created due to post-COVID situation, they did some actions, again, I think considering the kind of a solidarity. Even employees, I think they understood the situation because they are aligned with the vision. They know that organization, I think, stand above individuals. So because of that reason, they want to contribute to that effort of the organization and help the organization to survive during that period. So that kind of a commitment came from the people as well to look after the organization, to look after the purpose of the organization, right? So because of that reason, having a set vision, mission, and values help the organizations to survive this kind of a drastic situation. That's my understanding.
Oh, absolutely.
Also, Varun, I think it's also to look at, I think it's important to look at culture and your value system as actually an opportunity for leaders, right? Because if you've had that set in a very robust manner, it actually became a tool that leaders sought out to sort of, like the true north. guiding star to, people started consulting, stronger leaders started consulting their values for inspiration.
Yeah.
And that why behind what you decide made those decisions more strategic and relevant in a situation like this.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I
Sure.
want to speak a little bit about what Sarath said. I don't think it's about whether somebody cut their salary or not. I mean, business is a tough situation. It's whether people were aligned to that decision and whether they understood why that organization had to do that. A lot of the times, if you're questioning that, that also means I have no alignment to my organization. I don't have any alignment to the leadership that's making these decisions. Therefore, I'm questioning everything. If you actually can align your teams and have them understand, have them been part of that decision, right? At the end of the day, we all want to work in a company that thrives, work in an organization that thrives. And in order to do that, that alignment is good. And whether we work together in a situation like this and make any adjustments that need to be made, needs to be that collective decision.
I fully agree. In fact, this just reminds me during I think during the lockdown period as well, we did have a conversation with a director from a large conglomerate, and this particular director, when we were talking about this, and what he said was, or rather as an organization, what they did was, the first thing they said was, okay, no salary cuts, no job cuts, none of those things for the next 6 months. And they were like, they were firm. That's the first thing that he told us, that they communicated to the entire team. And then he said, but he also mentioned, look, at the 6-month point, we will revisit this. And we're going to do everything we can within these 6 months. We need your support. Nobody's going to lose their jobs. Nobody's going to lose their salaries, or there won't be any salary cuts. But we need to figure this out. And at 6 months, we need to relook at the numbers and then maybe make a call at that point as to what to do. And then he was saying that strategy really worked, because there was some sort of, like, the employees felt that, look, we're a part of one family, we are a part of a team, and this is not just the management's problem, this is all of our problems. So let's come together, let's be a part of the solution, and that really drove that organization. It sort of allowed them to see this pandemic through. So thank you so much, Chinthi, for bringing that. And Radhi, I'm so glad you touched on culture. And you rightly pointed out, because I was going to bring up this point, saying many critics have looked at this pandemic situation, and they've said, they've looked at it, and exactly like you said, if there were cracks in the organization before, they were highlighted. The pandemic just brought them out to the surface. And if you had a good culture going on, and if you had a very, very interesting, or rather your bonds were very strong, the culture just became great over the time. And that's a fantastic point that you brought up, which leads me to my next question. What role does culture have in the process of creating your values, or or rather in the setting of values in your respective organization? What role does culture have? And I know I have a tendency to ask too many questions as one question, but if you can also try and see if you can tell us also, like if your culture is not up to par, or if you have values written on one side and then your culture does not reflect that, then how does culture impact the actual carrying out of the values? So this is out of the panel. Again, it's a loaded question with 100 questions within it.
Sure. So I'll touch on your first part, Varun, which is the role culture plays in as part of your vision, mission, and all of that. So the culture is your resultant, right? Because
Right.
if your purpose and your authentic the reason for your being in this business, why you want to operate certain things, and your value system, embodies all of this. But culture is the result of those practices, how you do certain things. So it's not an overnight saying, oh, we're a people's organization, we will respect people, we are a organization that stands for diversity and inclusion, but it comes as part of the way that you have already set these visions. So that is central to all of that what we have been discussing. But it's an evolution, and it's a journey. So you start setting that from the beginning. So I think Chinthi touched on this when we started, that tone at the top. So when an organization starts,
Sure.
you start the tone that is set at the top by your founders or whoever that you are. Those are certain things that you won't make compromises on, and that sort of becomes the culture of your company, right? But touching on your second point, I mean, having that culture and sustaining that culture, especially as companies grow, and making sure this embodies, that boils down to the people. So your people are your ambassadors, right?
Right.
So they need to carry what you're standing up for. So it starts with even as ground level as your hires, your recruitment, what you look for. So for example, we come from the capital markets industry, knowledge process outsourcing. Technical skills play a huge role in the kind of quality we deliver to our clients. Having said that, it doesn't trump if you have bad attitude, if you don't, if you're a non-collaborative person, if you're not a team player, all of that basically override, however great you are technically. So it starts with that recruitment. So big companies, successful companies rather than big companies, successful companies with strong core values and culture have very good stringent recruitment practices. So because as you grow,
Right.
it is your founders are not going to be there setting that culture and saying this is not how you do, but you keep it up to every level 1 down, making sure that you're sustaining that culture. So it's your people. Sure. And your people boil down to your practices. So both of those are very important to making sure that culture is central to all of this.
Agreed. Chinthi, Sarath, any thoughts? Yeah.
I'll just add a little bit to it, and it's I like its story if you allow me to.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
So Mitra had grown pretty large over a very short period of time, and when I took over my role, one of the things I looked at were the values. There was a list of them, and while they were all really, really good statements, some of them I felt were statements, right?
Right.
So we actually hired an organization and had them help us redefine our values. And we did this in 2 ways. One is we went out. Now, we were an established company. We had customers and clients all over the world. We actually went to them. We went to them and asked them the question, when you work with Mitra, what do you see in us? Right? And then we asked ourselves, our employees, when you work here, what do you really feel, see, do, etc.? Because it was really important that we establish a set of values that were truly us, and that is how we boil down into these 4 things that I shared with you earlier. So It's really important. So I just completely echo Rathi's words there. It is the people. It is how we reflect ourselves, and how we want to continue to reflect ourselves. And in this midway point when we had suddenly grown to be much larger, and to your point, there was a culture in the organization when it was run by its founders, when it was the small team, and all of a sudden overnight it sort of booms into a 200-man team, and then you're trying to find yourself, right? So and it is not possible to actually have that the same level of touch, right? I grew up in an organization that did the same thing overnight, and it was very important to see come back and see, is this still us? Is this still us? You have to keep asking that question. And when we did that, we actually felt really good last year when we summarized it down to just the 4 that our customers and our clients thought we were, and we ourselves felt we were. So we needed a little help doing that, and but it is what drives us. It is what becomes the culture, and like I said, I think in times of real situations like what we've gone through, it really tests us as well.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. Sarath, any thoughts on culture and how to impact?
I think we say culture comes from the top, right?
Right.
So, we are talking here with 2 CEOs, and Chinthi and Rathi, you know what it means. And now, if you take my previous organization, this was a time where I think people tested the culture. That means in that organization, we had a cultural, I think, practice. Leaders are caring about people, safety of people, health of people. That was our culture. And during the crisis also, the leaders maintained that quality. And then the other thing is that the people on the other side, so we had a kind of a solidarity among ourselves to preserve the purpose of the organization, to go for the vision of the organization and live according to the values of the organization. People reciprocated in such a way that people helping to protect the organization while the organization leaders are helping people to get out of this situation and stay healthy during the situation. The first thing that this particular organization did was, we didn't have any precautionary measures to face this kind of a situation in our organization. We were just operating like all the other companies. So I think just after 16th of March or so, so we just, I think, stopped all the plants except our export operation. And then we went home. We started working from home. Mostly the leaders started working from home. First thing that we did was we started preparing the organization as a hygienic place and healthy place for people to come back. And then we started preparing the organization for a bounce back. That we that this will go out or this will stay there, but still we wanted to bring back people to the organization. We wanted to, I think, serve our customers. We wanted to look after our customers. We wanted to look after our people. We wanted to look after the organization. So culture, I think, what I felt was culture started working in a real way, pragmatic way during the crisis, because all of us were challenged by this situation. So when we are challenged by the situation, if we have a strong culture, I think it's very easy to sustain this kind of a situation in an organization.
Oh, that's very true. And so, Sarath, I have an interesting question for you. So we'll start with you, and then we'll go around the table. So if one were to come up with a mission and vision statement and values, and I know that Chinthi touched on this, and she did explain the process that her organization went through. How would you approach it? Like if you were put in charge, and how would you approach the whole crafting of it, and how would you approach the whole process and ensure that it remains authentic, like the end product remains authentic? What would your approach be?
I think that would depend on the level of maturity of the organization as well. I think if it is a startup, and it would be mostly coming from the leaders or the owners of the business, I think, who would start the business, they would be starting the business with a purpose, right?
Right.
So what is the purpose of the organization? So they are the ones who know the purpose, and then they need to rally around people around it. And as very correctly said, now when we do recruitments, and if it is a startup organization, if the leader knows the purpose of the organization, if leader is clear about the vision of the organization, if leader is clear about the values of the organization, then he may choose right recruitment tactics to select right people to the organization, who are aligned to the organization values, who are aligned to the organization vision and mission. And you can't find 100% that kind of people around the world. Then what you could do is you need to establish people systems in the organization so that whoever the people that we take into the organization would be taken through a grooming process to align them to the organization vision, mission, and the culture. And if it is a sort of a matured organization where you get maybe hundreds of people and operating in different countries and different continents, so the challenge is quite higher. And because they have their own way of doing things, they have their own, I think, maybe set of sub-values and sub-cultures. So in that kind of situation, it's going to be a needed quite extensive way of communicating these things to the entire population of the organization. But still, it is possible. And as I think I refer this book, Built to Last, few days back as I'm coming for this discussion.
Right.
And what they say is this is a sort of a continuum. Creating a visionary organization is a continuum. Whatever the organization they are, they can come into that continuum if they understand they have a purpose, if they understand they have a vision, if they understand they have a set of values, then it's just a matter of how they communicate in that vision, mission, and values among the population and bringing them into that context, right?
Oh, fantastic insights, Sarath. Thank you so much for that. Radhi, any thoughts on that? And
yeah, so I mean, I'll tell you our story, Varun, about crafting, going about having those value system. So we're a relatively smaller organization or younger organization. I mean, we just started in 2003 by 4 ex-Wall Street heads of research who came together. And their purpose of setting up the company was to, basically empower, transform and innovate for the clients, for investment banks and asset managers all over the world, to make life easier for them in very simple terms, right? But one of the things that they made sure in order to achieve that purpose was to have the right people, smart people, collaborative people, people who stood by integrity. And we have now today, after 15 years, we've gone through multiple changes in terms of being a smaller organization. We got taken over by Moody's, then we got spun off, and now we're part of a private equity firm. But what I'm trying to say is that throughout this journey, while our names and our boards have changed, or maybe even the statements have changed because we've become different companies, what didn't change was the culture, what we stood for. So right now it's empower, innovate, transform. But I mean, I've been with the company for 13 years, but throughout all of these changes, we've still stood by delivering the highest quality for the clients, but also never compromise. Central to all of this is our employee safety and employees' well-being, and making sure you have a collaborative team. So see, you can go through so many mergers and acquisitions and whatever. If that foundational aspect was set, I think at every stage of making sure what company we were part of, nobody compromised on those values, making sure those were the central point to making sure you completely run. So that is a good example to show that you can have different owners or boards, but it's about what your ground level DNA stands for.
right. And I have an interesting question, and I know, Chinthi, you did touch on the process itself. How do you get your employees to buy in on this? Now you mentioned that your process, Chinthi, that the employees were involved in the process, right? Did that help with the buy-in, and did that help them to believe in that common vision or the common goal, or did you have any challenges?
No, you know what? Purpose, driving a purpose in an organization and how you do it. I don't know whether you've heard this YouTube thing by Simon Sinek on how he talks about it. It is really biological, right? In order to control decision making, you really have to connect with your limbic brain, right? It's got to, touch you here. There's no, you're really not thinking from your heart, but you know what I mean, right? Your subconscious almost, right? And that is the process of buying. That is the process of saying, I've heard you. What did you think our values were? Here's, so you've got to, that is certainly a buying process, but it's also got to be, inclusivity from that perspective. I'll tell you another situation. Before Mitra, I was in another large organization that acquired another large organization, and we had the same number of people. We had about 10,000 people in one organization, and another 10,000 people on the other. Bringing these two organizations together, the board at the time really wanted to make sure that everybody felt included. So interestingly, both companies had 4 values. And what they did was, there were 2 values in both companies that started with the same letter, right, if you will. So they actually swapped out 2 of the old values and brought in 2 of the others. I think it is about that inclusivity. It is about making people feel I am part of it, so because you might have a company, and actually when we did that acquisition, there was the organization that helped us do the merger, recognized that the 2 cultures were very different. So how do you bring these 2 cultures together, and how do you make sure it not only survives but thrives? And I think that was also an integral part of it. So essentially saying, you guys are still, very much a part of us. And it starts by putting together those values, not to add a whole bunch of new values, but to actually say, let's remove 2 of ours and we'll add 2 of yours, because that makes now more sense, So it is speaking to that part of your brain that's making decisions, not the one that, listens to all the words, essentially.
Right. Yeah. And how about you, Radhi, or even Sarath? In your thoughts?
If I say one thing that I have seen in mergers and acquisition, I think rather than talking about the weaknesses of different organizations, first focus on the strengths of the organization who are merging, and then appreciate each other, and they start working on the strengths. So that could create, I think, momentum in the organization where each one is recognized by the others. So that creates momentum for the organization to move together. And the other thing is, as now we can create some kind of compelling goals for the both organizations to move together. For example, I think in my previous organization, around 2015, we had a motto saying that one team, one dream, right? So I think few teams are coming together, several global teams are coming together. We wanted to create a one team, and then we had a one dream to achieve together. So people are looking for this one team. Where is this team, and what is this dream? So it was created a source of inquisition in the minds of the people. Then people started searching for it, and then they found it. And we became a one team, and we beat our dream as well. So like that, there are ways that we could apply in bringing different teams together and create a one culture.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think Varun, I think what's important is that your culture is what comes to life in the time of crisis or in the time of change, right? So as long as that organization's identity is clear and you still continue to stand up for those values, I think your culture is what will sort of guide in that time of adversity. So 2 things that I really liked about what both Sarath sir and Chinthi said was about communication, right? So everything boils down to that communication. So communicating openly and empathetically those rationale for those decisions that you've made will allow your individuals to sort of hover around you and start working towards the same goal. So that open communication and empathetic communication are two key things. It's not just about sending an email out.
Right, absolutely. I completely agree. Let me ask about what happens when values change over time, and obviously you've had a lot of experience, in the corporate world, and we're seeing this in the West. With the Black Lives Matter movement, we are seeing organizations consciously making a shift, or they're really trying to be a part of the whole movement, and they're calling for more diversity and so on. And but there are certain organizations I mean, some organizations do it very well, whether it's through their campaigning or whether it's through their the internal transformation of their processes and so on. But then there is another side of it where you feel like maybe some organizations are trying to do it for the sake of doing, or maybe they're just trying to do it so that they don't feel left out, or they're not left out, or they're not woke enough for people to join them and so on, or they would or rather in fear that their customers would not come to them anymore, should they take another stance. So in this climate, should values change, or what happens when they change? Do you incorporate it in? And I guess the difficulty here is in the authenticity. Like, so what do you do in a climate like this? Have you seen values change over time? And then how do you deal with that?
So from my limited experience, Varun, I don't think values change, but right. I think they evolve. Okay. So like you very correctly said, there will be certain things you become more aware to, which you would have may have been ignorant to, and consciously you want to incorporate that. That's companies are very successful in doing that, consciously incorporating those diversity and inclusive stance, and right. Actually putting that into action, right? But then you're very right in saying there are the companies who have to, it's a tick in the box. You need to just have that so that it's so that you've covered all bases. But I think, again, I'm sure Chinthi and Sarath will be able to give more based on their experience. But from my limited experience, people who've done that as a tick in the box are companies, it's not sustainable. So they get left behind. It might work in the short term, but it won't be sustainable. And when incorporating these additional values or evolve, when your values evolve, I think successful companies who've actually from the heart have made sure to integrate these things have followed 3 very important steps to ensure this to happen. So one of the important things is starting with your already existing organization's purpose, and making right. sure how these values get incorporated, because in a time of crisis or in a time of change or in times of adding these Black Lives, all of these other changes, what your teams look for from your leaders is that trust and compassion and stability, right? So you need to have and for you to come up with that clear plan, you will need to sort of go back to your basis and look at your purpose. Second thing is you need to use your organization's identity to help guide your decisions. And finally, I think like both Chinthi and Sarath spoke about this earlier, communicating those decisions you've made. You have to underscore why you made them and pointing that to your purpose of the organization. And then it becomes an evolution in your values, and you start standing up consciously for those additional stuff. That's my experience. I don't think people who do it as a tick in the box, I don't think it's sustainable.
Yeah, and I think the tick in the box is just a marketing ploy.
Yeah,
really. Yeah. So that's why it doesn't work. That's why it doesn't scale. That's why it's not sustainable. You're marketing it, and that's just purely what it is. Values need to be, you have to live by your values, and you've got to be an example of it. Sure. For most people who know me, I'm a big advocate of diversity and inclusivity. I, have my founded an organization around it outside of what I do for my day job. So you to just live it. I think you know, in every interaction that you have, whoever who's in a conversation with you, irrespective of race, gender, sexual orientation, whatever that is, you've got to live that inclusivity. You've got to live having the heart, having the empathy, right, and getting them involved in that conversation. I think that's what will drive real change in any organization, any community, versus, you know, just saying, oh, by the way, now we're going to add this. This is very important to us. To me, that is, you know, I applaud, you know, at least, you know, to some degree, a part of me says, okay, I recognize the fact that now you've realized, great job, you know, and that is important, you know, but respecting another, you know, inclusivity is actually respecting somebody, right? I mean, if that is not part of your culture, then, you know, I'd question that organization.
Sure. Sarath, any thoughts on values evolving, as Radhi said, and what happens then?
Yeah, I think I agree both with Rathi and Chinthi. Now, when you say values, those are very fundamental human principles. If you dig into the values of, I think, visionary companies, what you see is they have not created those values. Those are fundamental human principles which had been there over the years, right? When you define those principles as values of the organization, what happens is people start thinking that, so they are talking about me. So they are talking about my family. They are talking about my ideals. And then they become part and parcel of this organization. So they don't see them different from the organization, because the values are emanating from the beliefs of the people, right? We have certain belief systems in our mind, right? And then if those values are aligned with our belief system, what would happen is then we started practicing those values. That means we started living those values, started behaving in accordance with those values. Now, all of a sudden, if a company says that we are going to change our value system, what happened is then people start questioning. So there are ways of behaving, right? That will create a sort of a turbulence in the organization, and then that might create mistrust on the organization, and that will not help. And as I think Rathi very correctly said, the values will not change over time. What will happen is they get evolved based on the level of awareness individuals get, based on the level of awareness the organization get about the purpose of the organization. The values evolve, and then with that evaluation, what we need to do is we need to do the right communication to different levels of the organization, so that they could align their behaviors with those new awareness and new understanding, and then they take the responsibility to behave in that new way of doing things, right?
Absolutely, agreed. You know, some fantastic points that were brought up. Let me ask the panel about what happens when there's a mismatch. Now, my next session actually at you know, in a few hours, we're planning to talk about office politics, and so when you have when it comes to your mission, vision, and values, what if there's a mismatch among, let's say, certain managers or certain people who try to bring in their agendas in, but when the overall organization itself or the top management has, you have one set of values and mission, but then what happens on the ground is a completely different story. And this could happen the other way around as well, where you know, the organization's mission, vision, and values on the book says one thing, but then what actually happens is a different thing. How would you recognize, so if you're a leader, how would you recognize that something is off on the ground, and then how would you go about you know, trying to see if you can kind of reel it back and kind of patch the crack, so to speak?
Maybe I can add to that. See, I think that happens in a confused organization. where an individual's agenda takes priority over, the organizations, if you
Right.
will. And I think it's really important to identify it and realign the teams around it. And also understand why that individual or a group of individuals may be sort of drawing away from the organization's vision, mission, and values, right? Is there a reason for that? Is there a hunger for something? Are they not being recognized for something? It's usually one or the other, or some disconnect that drives that kind of behavior. And I think as a leader, it's important because it's different to a manager, right? A manager will organize things, will staff things and all of that, but a leader really drives alignment of the people, right? Getting everybody together, getting everybody's opinions, making sure everybody's opinions are heard. They are felt like they're included in driving that. And I think if you see somebody sort of going off a little bit on the tangent, it's important for that leader to step back, understand why. Maybe there is a reason that individual feels threatened in some way, feels that they need to. So I think it's really important to understand why the person behaves a certain way, and then bring them into the fold, as much as possible. Get them aligned to those values, get them aligned to the vision, the objectives, the goals of the organization. There are situations where you might have to even make a stronger decision.
Sure. Sarath, any thoughts?
Yeah. Now, when it comes to misalignment, it can be both ways, I think. Employees could be misaligned with the values of the organization, and maybe leaders are misaligned with the values of the organization. Both could happen, right? So, one thing that organization should have a sort of a open environment for everyone to challenge, right? I can remember when I joined my previous organization, my VPHR, he came and I think put myself and CEO together. And then he said, I think CEO knows how he could operate the business, but when it comes to values, I think you are the guardian of values. So if you see the CEO is moving away from the values as HR, you need to raise the flag, right? You need to raise the flag, say that, I think, shall we stop a bit and think of it and then think the right way of doing things, right? So that's one way of, I think, aligning people with the values. And the other thing, if you take an organization, always there should be a conflict in nature between values as well. For example, if you take two values, integrity, empowerment and teamwork, right? When you say empowerment, we say people will be given the responsibility and accountability of what they think, what they do, right? But when it comes to teamwork, so it's not the individual, right? The person should need to look at the team, idea of the team, make the team accountable, make the team responsible. So then there's a conflict always between teamwork and empowerment. So in those situations, there should be a conflict within individuals, among individuals, for them to come to a right level of the value execution. So like that, conflict is inevitable. Conflict is, I think, productive. And therefore, we need to be very careful in saying that there's a conflict in values within the organization. Sure. There should be healthy conflict, and there could be unhealthy conflict also. The leaders should have very clear understanding about what is going on, and then only they have to step in and lead the team towards the right direction.
Oh. Very, very valid points. Radhi?
Yeah, so I think the good point that Sarath raised was the fact that you have an open culture to avoid this. But the point you made, Varun, I think having a disconnect is also sometimes inevitable with the growth of an organization. Obviously, pockets of culture can emerge, but as an organization and the tone at the top, I think you need to have zero tolerance for certain things, which invariably is your value system. So, for example, in our organization, there's zero tolerance for non-collaborative behavior, for creating politics, for having self-centered agendas. So if you start having the hard chats, like Chinthi said, you first obviously address why this is happening. But if once you realize that this is just that person's agenda and it's not really integrating with the overall culture, however great the employee is in the work, if you have zero tolerance for that kind of behavior and you make the hard call and hard chats, then it sets the culture and tone for the rest of the people that this is what the organization stands for. So that is very important. It's inevitable to have that, inevitable to not have a disconnect, but it's a sanity check you need to always have. I mean, I think HR plays a big role in this. So having an open door policy makes a big difference, because if you have a team member or a supervisor or your manager you feel is going on a tangent on these values, you should be able to go and address that with your HR team, and have the confidence that the HR team is not just going to be biased with the more senior individual. So those are certain things in practices also you will have to embed to make sure whenever there is a mismatch that you can bring back that alignment.
Oh, absolutely. Nicely said. Well, I'm afraid we are almost out of time. So before we wrap up, let me ask the panelists one more question to end on a positive and hopeful note. So if there was one takeaway message for our audience, be it a manager or an employee, if there was one message that they should walk away today with regards to vision, mission, and values, what should that one message be?
Sure. I guess, for anyone thinking of building an organization and driving it through a mission, the one thing I would say is pick a mission that will drive the right behavior. There's no amount of words, so it needs to really drive the right behavior. Be authentic. Be who you are, what your organization really is. Certainly, everybody starts organizations to either make money or do whatever, right? So, but that is just a result of it. But why do you exist? It needs to be able to drive a behavior, not just now, but the foreseeable future. I think changing your mission, vision, and values is a rare occurrence. It does happen. Like I have been in two situations that it has happened. It has evolved, not so much changed, to both Rathi and Sarath's points. However, it needs to be something that it's lasts a long time.
Right.
Over to you guys.
Thank you, Chinthi. Sarath, Radhi, who would like to go next?
Yeah, Sarath, you can go ahead, then I'll finish off.
Final message that I would like to give is we human beings, right?
Right.
So human beings, I think whatever the activities what we do, whether it's business or other life activities, we need to make sure that we are to improve the lives of the others. So we are to, I think, enhance the sustainability of this planet. So if we are aiming towards that, whether it's business or something else, so that we can sustain. So if our actions are going to, if our purpose is not clear, if our mission is not aligned with the natural principles of this world, people will not support that. So therefore, as businessmen, I think business people, they need to think about their purpose, their vision, their mission, their values, whether are they supporting the fulfillment of the individuals of this world. Right?
Thank you, sir.
So Varun, not much to say from my side because Chinthi and Sarath have nicely given that holistic thing. But
Sure.
I think in addition to the purpose, I think what I want to end with is you need to know how you want to get there. So that how has to always be your integral part of your value system.
Right.
There should be certain things that you won't take this particular road to get there, or you will take only this particular road to get there in terms of whether it's innovation, integrity, standing up for the right thing, and empathy. So having those, understanding how you will get to your purpose and standing by your purpose is very important to define that and to define that with your employees also.
Thank you, Rary, and thank you all for those wonderful insights and thoughts. Well, with that said, I'm afraid we are out of time, and we come to a close of today's session on vision, mission, and values, and we explored if it was a part of just a statement or a part of the DNA itself. Just want to take this opportunity to thank our panelists, Sarath, Chinthi, and Radhi. Thank you so much for being with us today. It's been a pleasure. So do stay back for a few minutes after our live session has ended for a short debrief. And so at the same time, a big shout out goes to the Luminary team and to our audience who tuned in today. Thank you so much for joining us. And a reminder to all our viewers, all of our past episodes are available on our YouTube channel. Look for Luminary Learning Solutions. Go in there, do swing by our page, and don't forget to like our videos and hit the subscribe button. I'm your host, Varun Chandramohan. Thank you for joining us. Over to you, Anton.
Thank you, Varun. A quick, I think we just did, but sadly all good things must come to an end. And we do like to thank everyone. Once again, a special thanks to Chinthi Weerasinghe of Mitra Digital, Rathnakala, Kumaragurunathan of Acuity Knowledge Partners, and Senior Consultant, People and Organizational, Sarath Kumara, for weighing into this delightful conversation. Varun, thank you very much for driving this conversation this morning, and some really, really valuable messages that we were able to derive from this. So some takeaways: that every organization has a mission, vision, and value statement. It is what tells everyone in a simple, clear, unique manner the point of the organization. It is more personal to employees, more impactful, more ambitious, and certainly more enduring. And as we heard, too often, the leadership and management lack the clear consensus on how to describe that purpose of the organization, and they don't conquer on how to articulate it. We saw the importance of effective communication to be broadly and consistently done. We find that the connection to leadership development, training, employee performance are often found to be weak. And once these obstacles, which are fundamental, are cleared, the responsibility is on the leadership. Having said that, a quick thank you also to our partners, H1, who've been our technology partner for the 3rd season running. For Racinta and team led by Samad Fernando, thank you very, very much. Coming up next in the hour is This, That, and the Other, Season 2. Do join in. And today they are discussing the good, the bad, and the ugly of yet another controversial topic: office politics and the fine art of sucking up. Stay tuned, enjoy the rest of the day, stay safe, stay productive.